Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I have several books that I'm going to be reading for this year, and so I thought that I would continue in finishing this one. I'm currently reading Dracula as well. That's what I've been doing on the side, and we've got to finish 1984 by George Orwell. So I thought I would get it started because we're only on page 8, I'm pretty sure. And maybe I'm at least going to finish this book for YouTube, or maybe make on part 2. If they're you're not that interested in seeing this anymore, or watching this anymore, then I'll probably stop and just read this on my own time. But I thought I would do a part 2 to see how you guys enjoy it again. So 1 second, let me get up my timer. We're just gonna do about 15 minutes. Okay, here we go. He sat back, and a sense of complete helplessness had descended upon him. To begin with, he did not know with any certainty that this was 1984. It must be round about that day, since he was fairly sure that his age was 39, and he believed that he had been born in 1944 or 1945. But it was never possible, knowing nowadays, to pin it down any time within a year or two. For whom, it suddenly occurred to him to wonder, was he writing this diary? For the future? For the unborn? His mind hovered for a moment round the doubtful date on the page, and then fetched up with a bump against the newspeak word doublethink. For the first time, the magnitude of what he had undertaken came home to him. How could you communicate with the future? It was of its nature impossible. Either the future would resemble the present, in which case it would not listen to him, or it would be different from it, and his predicament would be meaningless. For some time he sat gazing stupidly at the paper. The telescreen had changed over to a strident military music. It was curious that he had seemed not merely to have lost the power of expressing himself, but even to have forgotten what it was that he had originally intended to say. For weeks he had been making ready for this moment, and had never crossed his mind that anything would be needed except courage. The actual writing would be easy. All he had to do was transfer to the paper the Hold on, I need a drink. So let me pause this. Alright. Also, do you like my cup? Strawberry shortcake. I got it at Five Below. So, anyways. Interminable restless monologue that had been running inside his head for literally for years. At this moment, however, even the monologue had dried up. Moreover, his varicose ulcer had begun itching unbearably. He dared not scratch it, because if he did so, it always became inflamed. The seconds were ticking by. He was conscious. Oh, my battery's 20%. That's okay. We're almost done. Well, I say almost done, but only imperfectly Hold on, I skipped a little bit. The seconds were ticking by. He was conscious of nothing but except the blankness of the page in front of him, the itching of the skin above his ankle, the blaring of the music, and slight wooziness caused by the gin. Suddenly, he began writing in sheer panic, only imperfectly aware of what he was setting down. His small but childish handwriting straggled up and down the page, shredding at first its capital letters and finally even its full stops. April 4th, 1984. Last night to the flicks, all war films. One very good one of a ship full of refugees being bombed somewhere in the Mediterranean. Audience much amused by shots of the great, huge, fat man trying to swim away with a helicopter after him. First you saw him swallowing along in the water, wallowing along in the water like a porpoise. Then you saw him through the helicopter's gun sights. Then he was full of holes, and the sea around him turned pink, and he sank as suddenly as though the holes had let in the water. Audience shouting with laughter when he sank. Then you saw a lifeboat full of children with a helicopter hovering over it. There was a middle-aged woman, might have been a Jewess, sitting up in the bow with a little boy. Bow? When it's about a boat, it's bow, right? With a little boy about 3 years old in her arms. Little boy screaming with fright and hiding his head between her breasts as if he was trying to burrow right into her, and the woman putting her arms around him, comforting him, although she was blue with fright herself, all the time covering him up as much as possible, as if she thought her arms could keep the bullets off of him. The helicopter planted a 20-kilo bomb in among them. Terrific flash, and the boat went all to matchwood. Then there was a wonderful shot of a child's arm going up, right up into the air. A helicopter with a camera in its nose must have followed it up, and there was a lot of applause from the party seats, but a woman down in the prole part of the house suddenly started kicking up a fuss and shouting. They didn't oughter of showed it, not in front of the kids. They didn't. It ain't right. Not in front of the kids. It ain't. Until the police turned her out. I don't suppose anything happened to her. Nobody cares what the proles say, typical prole reaction. They never. Winston stopped writing, probably because he was suffering from a cramp. He did not know what had made him pour out this stream of rubbish. But the curious thing was that he was doing so. A totally different memory had clarified itself in his mind, to the point where he almost felt equal to writing it down. It was, he now realized, because of this other incident that he had suddenly decided to come home and begin the diary today. It had happened that morning at the ministry. If anything so nebulous, I've never seen this word before actually, could be said to happen. It was nearly 1100, and in the records department where Winston worked, they were dragging the chairs out of the cubicles and grouping them in the center of hall, opposite the big telescreen, in preparation for the 2 minutes hate. Winston was just taking his place in one of the middle rows when 2 people whom he knew by sight but had never spoken to came unexpectedly into the room. One of them was a girl whom he often passed in the corridors. He did not know her name, but he knew that she worked in the fiction department. Excuse me. Presumably, since he had sometimes seen her with oily hands and carrying a spanner, she had some mechanical job on one of the novel-writing machines. She was a bold-looking kind of girl of about 27, with thick dark hair and freckled face and swift athletic movements. A narrow scarlet sash, emblem of the junior high anti-sex league, was wound several times around the waist of her overalls, just tightly enough to bring out the shapeliness of her hips. Winston had disliked her from the very first moment of seeing her. He knew the reason. It was because of the atmosphere of hockey fields and cold baths and community hikes and general clean-mindedness which she managed to carry about with her. He disliked nearly all women, and especially the young and pretty ones. It was always the women, and above all the young ones, who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of slogans, the amateur spies and nosers out of unorthodoxy. But this particular girl gave him the impression of being more dangerous than most. Once they passed in the corridor, she had given him a quick sidelong glance which seemed to pierce right into him, and for a moment had filled him with black terror. The idea had crossed his mind that she might be an agent of the thought police. That it was true was very unlikely. Still, he continued to feel a peculiar uneasiness, which had fear mixed up in it as well as hostility, whenever she was anywhere near him. The other person was a man named O'Brien, a member of the inner party and holder of some post so important and remote that Winston had only a dim idea of its nature. A momentary hush passed over the group of people round the chairs as they saw the black overalls of an inner party member approaching. O'Brien was a huge, burly man with thick neck and coarse, humorous, brutal face. In spite of his formidable appearance, he had a certain charm of manner. He had a trick of resettling his spectacles on his nose, which was curiously disarming. In some indefinable way, curiously civilized, in which it was a gesture which, if anyone had still thought in such terms, might have recalled an 18th century nobleman offering his snuff-box. Winston had seen O'Brien perhaps a dozen times in almost as many years. He felt deeply drawn to him, and not solely because he was intrigued by the contrast between O'Brien's urbane nature and his prize-fighter's physique. Much more it was because of a secretly held belief, or perhaps not even a belief, merely a hope, that O'Brien's political orthodoxy was not perfect. Something in his face suggested it irresistibly. And again, perhaps it was not even orthodoxy. Okay, now I can't read it. Hold on. Unorthodoxy. That was written in his face. But simply intelligence. But at any rate, he had the appearance of being a person that you could talk to, if somehow you could cheat this telescreen and get him alone. Winston had never made the smallest effort to verify this guess. Indeed, there was no way of doing so. At this moment, O'Brien glanced at his wristwatch, saw that it was nearly 1100, and evidently decided to stay in the records department until the 2 minutes hate was over. He took a chair in the same row as Winston, a couple places away. A small sandy-haired woman who worked in the next cubicle to Winston was between them. The girl with dark hair was sitting immediately behind. The next moment, a hideous grinding screech as of some monstrous machine running without oil burst from the big telescreen at the end of the room. It was a noise that set one's teeth on edge and bristled the hair at the back of one's neck. The hate had started. As usual, the face of Emmanuel Goldstein, the enemy of the people, had flashed onto the screen. There were hisses here and there among the audience. The little sandy-haired woman gave a squeak of mingled fear and disgust. Goldstein was the renegade and black backslider who, once long ago, how long ago nobody quite remembered, had been one of the leading figures of the party. Wow, we only have 2 minutes remaining. Crazy. Sorry. Let me restart that. Had been one of the leading figures of the party, almost on a level with Big Brother himself, and then had engaged in a counter-revolutionary activities, had been condemned to death, and had mysteriously escaped and disappeared. The program of the 2 minutes hates varied from day to day, but there was none in which Goldstein was not the principal figure. He was the primal traitor, the earliest defier of the party's purity. All subsequent crimes against the party, all treacheries, acts of sabotage, heresies, deviations sprang directly out of his teaching. Somewhere or other he was still alive and hatching his conspiracies, perhaps somewhere beyond the sea, under the protection of his foreign paymasters, perhaps even, so it was occasionally rumored, in some hiding place in Oceania itself. Winston's diaphragm was constricted. He could never see the face of Goldstein without a painful mixture of emotions. It was a lean, Jewish face, with a great fuzzy aureole of white hair and a small goatee beard. A clever face, and yet somehow inherently despicable, with a kind, senile silliness in the long, thin nose near the end of which a pair of spectacles was perched. 50 seconds left, just to let you know. I have to find my place again. It resembled the face of a sheep, and the voice, too, had a sheep-like quality. Goldstein was delivering his usual venomous attack upon the doctrines of the party, an attack so exaggerated and perverse that a child should have been able to see through it, and yet just plausible enough to fill one with an alarm feeling that other people, less level-headed than oneself, might be taken in by it. He was abusing Big Brother. He was denouncing the dictatorship of the party. He was demanding the immediate conclusion of peace with Eurasia. He was advocating freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of thought. He was crying hysterically that the revolution had been betrayed, and all this in rapid polysyllabic speech. Wow, time is up. I'm going to finish this though. Okay. Polysyllabic speech, which was a sort of parody of the habitual style of the orators of the party, and even contained newspeak words indeed, than any party member would normally use in real life. Now, I just want to, first right off the bat, apologize for any of the... Where'd that bookmark go? Alright, I'll find it in a second. I just want to apologize for any of the words that I mispronounced. Apparently I can't read. I went blind for a second. Like, it was probably the tiredness, but... because it's like midnight. But I hope you enjoyed that reading. It definitely was better than the last one. And if you enjoyed this video, please let me know, because I actually do need to know, okay? Like, honestly. I need to know because, well, I need to know if I need to make more of these. And if I need to make more of these, I will. And that means I will keep this book on hold and just read it whenever I want to for a video. I have more coming up, so this is not like I'm doing this because I don't know what I'm doing, you know what I mean? I'm just doing this because I thought it would be fun to have a part 2. And I think that's everything. My phone's at 10%. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Hold on. I'm gonna use this to be read list as a bookmark for right now. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next video.